Senator, not that
Mr.
I'm aware
Young,
of.
there were disturbing reports that when the top uniformed attorney in the Army raised concerns about the legality of using National Guard soldiers and other DoD resources for immigration enforcement, you told him to stop meddling in state affairs, and then shortly after that, Secretary Hegseth fired the JAG officer with no explanation. Mr. Young, the report does not have a direct quote, but is it true that you said something along?
I recognize Senator Warren, and I have a markup across the street in the Rules Committee, and Senator Budd will preside during my absence.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I want to start by extending my condolences to the family of Specialist Sarah Beckstrom, who paid the ultimate sacrifice while deployed in D.C., and my thoughts are with Staff Sergeant Andrew Wolf as he continues to fight for his life. And I want to make clear, nobody here is impugning the people who are on the streets. No one here is impugning the integrity of our National Guard. We're just asking about how they got put there by people in leadership positions. It's been 6 months since President Trump and Secretary Hegseth deployed the National Guard onto American streets. The investigation that I just released with several senators on this committee found that DOD has footed the bill for more than $2 billion in support of the Department of Homeland Security and immigration enforcement. That's money that was meant for military training facilities, crumbling military barracks, schools for military families, and instead, it was spent on deploying our National Guard to pick up trash in Washington, D.C., and deal with civilian protesters in other cities. So I think we are right to ask the question about how this happened. Mr. Young, you are one of the senior attorneys at DOD. You were the acting DOD General Counsel when the decision was first made to deploy the National Guard to Los Angeles. Now, if an attorney raises concerns about the legality of military operations, do you think the appropriate response is to tell them to shut up and get out of the way?
I'm sorry, Senator, could you repeat that question?
Yeah, if a JAG attorney raises concerns about the legality of a military operation, do you think the appropriate response is to tell them to shut up and get out of the way?
Senator, the law provides that military judge advocates are able to provide independent advice
That's right.
to military commanders, to the Chief of Staff of the Army, and the Secretary of the Army.
And I'm asking you about the appropriate response. Do you think the appropriate response is to tell them to shut up and get out of the way?
Senator, I'm not aware of a response of that nature.
I'm asking you if you think that would be an appropriate response. It ought to be an easy yes or no question.
But by whom, Senator?
By you.
Senator, not that
Mr.
I'm aware
Young,
of.
there were disturbing reports that when the top uniformed attorney in the Army raised concerns about the legality of using National Guard soldiers and other DoD resources for immigration enforcement, you told him to stop meddling in state affairs, and then shortly after that, Secretary Hegseth fired the JAG officer with no explanation. Mr. Young, the report does not have a direct quote, but is it true that you said something along those lines?
Senator, the context of that is that the officer was wanting to comment on whether the state, in a state capacity, could provide personnel who were in a state status, not in a federal military status, not part of the Army, to help assist. And so we have many missions, Senator, that are occurring on the border right now. We have 3,000 approximately National Guard personnel.
So your answer is to confirm that report, and that is what you said. Is that right?
That is not what I said.
So you're saying you didn't say that?
I did not say that.
Well, I'm glad you said you didn't say it, because this is not the only report of JAG being sidelined by this administration. And I'm glad you think it might be inappropriate for JAG to be sidelined. More recently, the senior JAG at Southcom was reportedly overruled when he objected that the boat strikes near Venezuela are extrajudicial killings. Look, these deployments are not just legally questionable. They come at an extreme cost, and they come at the cost of mounting billions of dollars and at reports that it hurts troops' morale. In fact, the first Trump administration discontinued military support to DHS at the border and detention facilities, citing both the cost and the fact that our troops were demoralized by being put in that position. So I think it's exactly right that we are raising these questions, and whether or not JAG is receiving the appropriate opportunity to weigh in on illegal orders. If you say you didn't say it, then I trust what that means is you don't intend to say it, and you do not intend to sideline JAG when they raise questions about legality. Do I have that right, Mr. Young?
Senator, it's been my experience, having been a judge advocate in both the Air Force and in the Army with almost 30 years of judge advocate experience, that judge advocates are able to quickly and clearly communicate their concerns to leadership, and that leadership is very attentive to their concerns when they're raised, and they have the ability to provide that advice
Look,
independently.
I don't have concerns about the judge advocates. I have
Senator's
concerns
time has
about the
expired.
leadership and whether or not they are being sidelined. And I take it what you're saying is they should not be sidelined. It is important for our troops
Senator's
that
time
they
expired.
not be. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
What we just witnessed in that chamber was not a routine exchange of legal nuance. It was a moment where the language of power collided with the language of accountability. When Senator Elizabeth Warren leaned forward and pressed the Department of Defense's senior attorney with a simple question. So, you're saying you didn't say that? The room shifted, because that question was not about semantics. It was about whether truth still matters inside the machinery of government. This hearing did not begin with confrontation. It began with solemn acknowledgement, the recognition of sacrifice. The reminder that those in uniform are not abstractions, not political tools, not line items in a budget spreadsheet. They are real people whose lives are shaped by decisions made far from the streets they are ordered to patrol. Senator Warren made that distinction clear. She was not questioning the integrity of the National Guard. She was questioning the integrity of the leadership that sent them there. 6 months after National Guard deployments placed service members onto American streets, the numbers now speak with unsettling clarity. More than $2 billion redirected. Funds originally designated for training facilities, deteriorating barracks, and schools for military families instead diverted toward domestic operations supporting immigration enforcement. Not on foreign soil, not in a declared conflict. But at home in cities, in public spaces, performing roles far removed from their intended mission. And that is where this hearing turned from policy debate into a moral inquiry. Because when an attorney trained to uphold military law raises concerns about whether an operation crosses legal boundaries, the response from leadership becomes the test, not of loyalty, but of constitutional discipline. Senator Warren's question cut directly to that test. If a judge advocate voices concern, is the answer to silence them, to push them aside, to tell them to step out of the way? The witness hesitated, asked for repetition, deferred to structure, cited procedure. But the question remained stubbornly simple, and simplicity is often the most dangerous thing in a room built on complexity. What followed was not merely a denial, it was an exposure of a deeper tension. Reports had surfaced that the Army's top uniformed legal officer was dismissed after raising objections about the legality of using Guard resources for civilian enforcement roles. No explanation, no transparent justification, just removal. When asked whether he had told that officer to stop interfering in state matters, the Department of Defense attorney denied it, clearly, unequivocally. So you're saying you didn't say that? That line mattered because it wasn't just about one sentence. It was about whether legal oversight inside the military is protected or punished. Whether independent legal advice is valued or quietly overridden when it becomes inconvenient. Whether law exists to guide power or merely to excuse it after the fact. This hearing revealed something more unsettling than a disputed quote. It revealed a pattern of friction between lawful restraint and executive ambition. Reports of legal objections dismissed, of counsel overruled, of warnings raised and then buried beneath urgency, politics, and narrative control. When legal voices are sidelined, the consequences don't arrive all at once. They accumulate, slowly, bureaucratically, until one day the extraordinary becomes routine. And the cost is not only measured in dollars, though those numbers are staggering. Billions redirected, missions blurred, morale strained. Service members asked to perform duties that previous administrations, including the same administration in earlier years, ultimately abandoned because they undermined readiness and purpose. Those decisions were once reversed precisely because leadership acknowledged the toll they were taking. Yet, here we are again. This moment in the hearing was not about partisan disagreement. It was about the structure of restraint itself, about whether the safeguards built into military law are still allowed to function when the stakes are politically charged. Judge advocates are not obstacles. They are guardrails. They exist to ensure that orders remain lawful, proportional, and anchored to the Constitution they swear to defend. Senator Warren made that distinction explicit. Her concern was not with the legal core. It was with whether leadership listens to them at all. The witness insisted that, in his experience, legal advisors are heard, that their concerns are communicated, that leadership is attentive, and perhaps that is true in theory. But theory collapses under pattern, and patterns are what oversight exists to examine. Because when legal objections arise repeatedly, and those raising them are removed, overruled, or dismissed without explanation, the message travels faster than any memo. It tells future advisors exactly how safe it is to speak up. It tells commanders how much legal caution will be tolerated. And it tells the public whether the law is still an active force, or merely a decorative one. This hearing was not a conclusion, it was a warning that democratic systems do not erode with a single dramatic act. They erode through quiet sidelining, through unanswered questions, through moments when clarity is avoided because clarity would require accountability. What we saw today was one of those moments where the camera catches the machinery grinding, where a single sentence reveals the tension between power and principle, where the question, "Did you say that?" becomes a referendum on whether the system still corrects itself. And that is why hearings like this matter, not because they always produce immediate answers, but because they preserve the act of asking. They insist that leadership explain itself. They remind those in authority that silence is not neutrality. It is a choice. The law does not defend itself. It relies on people willing to speak, to question, and to challenge decisions made behind closed doors. When those voices are diminished, everyone loses clarity. Everyone loses trust. This moment will not dominate headlines forever, but it will echo wherever decisions are made without scrutiny, wherever legality is treated as optional, wherever service members are placed into roles without clear justification. And it will remain as a record. A reminder that someone asked the question out loud. If you believe accountability should never be optional, if you believe power must always answer to law, and if you believe transparency is the foundation of a functioning republic, support our work. Subscribe to Liberty Report USA.